I once thought nothing could make my heart go numb until that Christmas Eve. When the doorbell rang, I was tying the last ribbon on the pie, full of hope for a warm evening. But when I opened the door, I saw my husband Ethan standing there, his hand on the shoulder of a young woman whose pregnancy was obvious. He spoke with a calmness that felt cruel. "This is my Christmas gift to you, Lois, something you could never give." The air in the house went heavy. The tree still glowed, the scent of cinnamon and apples lingered, yet my heart went quiet and shattered inside me in what should have been the happiest moment of my life. Outside, the wind rose, making the Christmas lights on the porch tremble. They stayed lit, but their glow flickered as if clinging to the last trace of warmth in a house that had lost its soul. He sat down at the table, poured himself a drink, as though nothing serious had happened. "You should learn to accept things, Lois," Ethan said, his tone so calm it chilled me. "Christmas is for forgiveness, not for tears." Before I could answer, the voice from the TV behind him cut through his words. A breaking news alert scrolled across the screen. "Police are expanding an investigation into financial fraud and money laundering at Wexler & Co. The main suspect is CEO Ethan Reborn." Christmas music still played faintly under the report, creating a cruel irony. Ethan turned his head slowly. The smug expression on his face drained to white. I saw his fingers tighten around the glass until his knuckles turned pale. Tara, sitting beside him, whispered in a shaky voice, Are you involved in that?" His eyes darted toward me, then back to the screen where the company's headquarters appeared, followed by the caption, "Under investigation for tax fraud and illegal fund transfers." "You should turn off the TV," I said softly, my voice oddly calm. "It's never pleasant to see your own name in a Christmas broadcast." He forced a laugh, pretending not to care. "The media always exaggerates. It's just a misunderstanding." I tilted my head, studying him as if he were a stranger. "Seems like your Christmas gift didn't turn out quite as planned, did it?" My words made him jump up and hurl his glass to the floor. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the room, blending with the half-finished carols still playing. Wine splattered across the white tablecloth, leaving red stains that bled through the cloth. Tara gasped and stood abruptly. "Ethan, we should go." He grabbed his coat and dragged her out like a man fleeing the scene. I sat down in the chair he'd just left, my fingers brushing the warm spill of wine. The mix of alcohol and candle wax made my head spin. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed steady, distant. I looked around and realized the room felt larger than before, larger because it was empty, because it lacked a human presence. The lights from the tree reflected on our wedding photo on the wall, blurring my face amid 1,000 tiny points of light. I took the frame down. Behind the glass was us, his bright smile, my quiet lean against him. A perfect couple to outsiders. I turned the photo over, face down on the table, and dropped into the chair. My body trembled, but not from fear. Something colder, sharper was rising inside me. The news ended, replaced by Christmas music. I reached for the remote and turned it off. The house sank into a hush so deep I heard the porch lights hum. Outside, the porch lights flickered softly, their glow catching on the shattered glass, scattering small fragments of light like lonely flames. I stepped outside and stood under the porch, watching the snow fall in slow waves. No one knew what had happened in this house, as no one knew that, in the freezing Christmas night, a woman who'd lost everything was beginning to wake up. I didn't know where I'd go. Only that if I stayed another minute, I'd die slowly in this silence. The house was so still I could hear the wind seeping through the cracks. The smell of wine on the floor was sharp and sweet, mixed with the fading scent of candles. I didn't know whether to clean it or leave it all as evidence of the night my marriage collapsed in silence. Then my phone buzzed, snapping me out of thought. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated for a few seconds before opening the message. "Don't make a scene, Lois. This house, this life, has no place for you anymore." Below it was a photo Tara lying on my wedding bed, wrapped in white sheets, her smile radiant, as if to carve my humiliation deeper. My vision blurred. The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself, but my legs wouldn't obey. The tree toppled, ornaments shattering, their glassy clinks mingling with my ragged breaths. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, the white ceiling lights of the hospital blinded me. A soft voice spoke beside me. "You're awake now, don't try to move." I turned my head and saw a young nurse checking the IV line. Her voice was gentle but firm. "You suffered severe psychological shock and arrhythmia. The doctor said you were lucky your neighbor found you in time." From the ceiling, the steady beeping of the heart monitor echoed, like the slow footsteps of someone walking away from me forever. I didn't ask any questions. I knew exactly who had put me here. Amid the scent of antiseptic and the squeak of rubber soles, memories flooded back in waves. Mornings when I got up early to make his breakfast while he stared in the mirror adjusting his tie. The times I said I wanted to go back to design work, and he'd say, "Don't delude yourself, Lois. That stage won't feed anyone." 10 years had passed like a play where I never got to write a single line. I was just a prop, something to display, not a person with dreams. I pulled the blanket higher, trying to hide the shame rising in me. I once thought I was strong, but I'd only been a woman lulled to sleep by empty promises. Down the hallway, the sound of a patient crying startled me. I looked out the window. Snow was falling, white, soft, and freezing. Each flake a reminder that time keeps moving, whether I lie here or not. When the doctor came in to check on me, he said, "You should stay a few more days, stabilize your mind. Prolonged stress can damage the heart." "No need. I'm fine." He looked at me, doubtful. But I knew better than anyone what I needed wasn't more medicine. I needed a reason to stand up. That afternoon, when the nurse removed the IV, I sat up slowly. The window reflected my pale face, my dark circles, but deep in my eyes, something had shifted. No more fear, no more waiting. I requested discharge that evening. The nurse was surprised. "Is someone coming to get you?" I shook my head. "No one. But I'll make it home." Outside, snow blanketed the steps. I walked through the hospital doors, the wind slapping my face, cold, but real. My breath came out like thin smoke, fading into the night. On the road, I ordered a car to my mother's house in the town of Ashmont, a place I hadn't set foot in for years. As the car left the city, the lights behind me dimmed until only darkness remained, and the sound of tires crushing snow. I leaned my head against the window, eyes closed. Amid the hum of the engine, I heard a faint voice in my head, my own, quiet but steady. "He can take everything, but he can't kill what's left of me." Street lights swept across my face, dividing it between light and shadow. I realized for the first time in years I didn't want to look back. The city faded in the rearview mirror, its lights like dying embers. The car rolled past mist-covered fields, the road growing emptier toward the coast. I listened to the wind slipping through the cracks, dry and cold, whispering one truth: there was nothing left to return to. When the car stopped, Ashman's shore appeared still and gray, seagulls tilting against the pale sky. The scent of salt and seaweed filled the air, a smell I'd once hated as a child but now found strangely peaceful. The wooden door of the small hillside house opened before I could knock. My mother, Margaret, stood there, her figure smaller than the last time I saw her. She gently opened her arms to hug me, and the familiar scent of old fabric and lavender oil caught in my throat. "You're home, that's all that matters, Lois." I nodded, my voice hoarse. "I'm sorry, Mom." That evening, the house glowed with a gentle light I had long forgotten. We didn't talk much. She made seafood soup. I helped her set the table. The soft clink of the spoon against the pot was steady, soothing the dull ache still pulsing inside me. When we finished eating, she poured me a cup of tea. "This morning, I cleaned up the attic. There are still some of your father's things up there." I looked up and met her eyes. There was both sadness and tenderness in them. Carrying the tea, I climbed the old wooden stairs. Each creak seemed to recount the years that had passed. The small attic was dusty, its windows slightly ajar, letting in the sea breeze that fluttered the papers on the desk. My father's old desk lamp was still there, its brass surface darkened by time. Stacks of stage sketches lay piled together, the pencil strokes still sharp though the paper had yellowed. Among them was a single white envelope, separated from the rest, labeled in familiar handwriting. "For Lois." Inside was a faded contract, but the title was still clear enough to read. "Winter's Oath. Exclusive copyright work. Author Charles Ellison." Below it was my father's signature and a handwritten note. "Daughter, If one day you forget your own voice, you can find it here. I opened each old sketch, seeing designs of falling snow, a lone pine tree at center stage, and a note in his handwriting. Silence is not the end, but the beginning of the vow. I gently closed the envelope, as if holding something that had just awakened after years buried. I knew this wasn't a keepsake, it was a reminder, a chance. My father's hand still guiding me, even when he was gone. That morning, dew still clung to the rooftops, and the trees lining the streets of Ashmont. I walked down the cobblestone road toward the town square where the old theater stood silent, a red brick building whose sign had nearly faded with time. The wooden doors were dark, the glass panes cracked, and yet when I placed my hand on them, what I felt first wasn't nostalgia, but fear. I pushed the door open. The scent of dust and old wood rushed out, tinged faintly with new paint. Inside, dim light streamed through the high ceiling, and floating specks of dust hung in the air like ashes. A group of people gathered at the center of the stage. The music stopped when the door creaked. Someone turned to look. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt," I said softly, my voice barely audible even to myself. A man stepped out from the rows of seats, script in hand, his eyes sharp but not cold. He was tall, his hair slightly tousled, a trace of stage chalk still on his coat. "Are you looking for someone?" he asked, with the gravelly voice of someone who had spent years speaking on stage. I just wanted to see this theater again. My father used to work here." Charles Ellison. He hesitated, then smiled briefly somewhere between surprise and respect. "So you're his daughter?" "I'm Gavin, the current acting director." Mr. Charles was my first mentor. He stepped down from the stage and offered his hand. It was warm and steady, so different from the chill of this place. "We're trying to revive Winter's Oath. Would you like to take a look?" He added that if I ever needed to look a truth in the eye, he could introduce me to Paula, an investigative journalist by the docks. Hearing that name made my heart twist. I followed him into the auditorium. On stage, a few young actors were rehearsing the opening scene. Their voices carried but missed the depth, the quiet loneliness my father had once written. I sat in the front row, feeling both close and far away. A short-haired girl turned to whisper to her friend, "Who's that?" "Heard she's some millionaire's ex-wife, dumped, apparently." They giggled. I heard every word but didn't react. Instead, a hollow cold spread through me, then a flicker of heat followed. Something close to anger but deeper, like shame that had finally ripened. Gavin noticed. He closed his script and said softly, "Don't mind them. They're young, they don't yet understand what it means to stand on this stage." "I was young once too," I replied, my eyes fixed on the faded backdrop. "And just as arrogant until I forgot who I was." Gavin looked at me, his eyes full of empathy. "Mr. Charles always said emotions never disappear. They just fall asleep. You haven't forgotten how to move emotion, Lois, you just haven't dared to use it again." His words struck deep, touching the part of me I'd buried the longest. Outside, the sound of light rain tapped on the metal roof, familiar, like those nights when Father would write plays and I'd hide under the drawing table, listening as he read each line aloud. I turned to Gavin, my voice low but steady. "What do you need me to do?" "I'm not sure. Maybe help refine the script. Maybe teach them what this play truly means. Or, if you're brave enough, you could try the lead role." I laughed softly. "The lead role? I haven't been on stage in over 10 years. Then it's time you came back," Gavin said, his voice calm but resolute. His words echoed in my mind long after I left the theater. I walked down the narrow street, the sea breeze brushing against my shoulders, carrying the faint taste of salt. I wondered if I had the strength to face the light I once feared. That night, I stood before the mirror, looking at the woman staring back. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. In my mind, my father's Winter's Oath sketches appeared clearly. Falling snow, a vow, and a woman standing alone on an empty stage, speaking her final line. Maybe I did remember how to move emotion. I needed the courage to begin again. In the days that followed, I practically lived in the theater. Every morning when Gavin unlocked the doors, I was already there, holding the worn-out script. My voice grew hoarse, my legs ached, but the more exhausted I became, the more alive I felt. The lines in Winter's Oath weren't the character's words, they felt written for me, for the woman trying to breathe again after ruin. When night fell, I returned to my small room near the shore. Moonlight spilled over my father's designs spread across the desk. I sat down, scribbling notes along the script's margins, then opened my phone to check the news. Headlines flashed: Wexler & Co. under investigation for money laundering. CEO Ethan Rayburn missing after first interrogation. I read slowly. What I felt wasn't satisfaction, it was emptiness. The truth always finds its way to light. It's that people rarely prepare to face it. At midnight, my phone lit up. A message from his old number, his name still saved the same. Help me, Lois. You're still my legal wife. If you cooperate, we can both get out of this. I stared at the words, motionless for a long time. The glow of the screen reflected on my face, caught in the mirror beside me, a face calm, almost cold. I turned off the phone, set it down, then opened a small wooden box where I kept old papers. Inside, I found several contracts Ethan once told me to sign for convenience. My signatures lay. They're steady, neat, but trembling now with new meaning. I remembered what Paula, the investigative journalist Gavin had introduced, had told me: every crime leaves a trace, Lois. You need the courage to look at it. The next morning I went to see her. Her small office was inside an old building near the docks. Paula greeted me with sharp but honest eyes. I spread the documents on her desk, explaining how Ethan had used a company under my name to hide his money flow. She flipped through each page carefully, taking notes, then looked up and asked, "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once we open this file, there's no turning back." I answered simply, "I've already gone far enough. What's the point of turning back now?" Paula smiled and extended her hand. "Then let's begin." That afternoon, I returned to the theater. Gavin was standing on stage, adjusting the lights. When he saw me, he squinted slightly and asked, "Tired?" "Not as much as 10 years ago," I said. He smiled faintly and handed me a cup of water. "When you perform," he said quietly, "don't just speak the lines. Let all your pain become the breath of the character." I nodded. "I'm doing exactly that, Gavin." That evening, we rehearsed the final scene, the one where the woman in Winter's Oath stands alone in the snowstorm, vowing never to let anyone else write her life again. I spoke the lines, my voice trembling at first, then growing stronger, until the whole theater fell silent. When I finished, Gavin looked at me for a long moment and said quietly, "This isn't acting anymore, Lois. This is you." I turned away without answering. Somewhere deep inside, I felt that I had just reclaimed something I'd lost long ago. As opening night drew near, everything became urgent. Paula called again, her voice quick and serious. "Tara was arrested this morning in Boston. The police are searching for Ethan. If anything happens, I need you to stay calm and silent until we know more." She said the evidence had already gone to the prosecutor. The police would choose a safe moment. I murmured an "okay," though my heart raced. Tara was arrested, which meant the net had tightened, and Ethan wouldn't be able to hide much longer. That night, I arrived late at the theater. The rehearsal room was dark, the spotlight shining down on the center of the stage. I stepped into the position of my character, the woman waiting for the snow to fall so she could start her life anew. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, if Father were still alive, he would understand. This stage isn't just a place to perform, it's where I prove I can still stand tall, even if a storm is coming. Opening night arrived. The city glowed with lights. From backstage, I heard the crowd filling the seats, the creak of chairs, the laughter and chatter echoing like the pulse pounding in my chest. I inhaled slowly, a strange calm mixed with anticipation. All the months of rehearsal, every drop of sweat, every callus, everything led to this moment. Gavin approached and laid a hand gently on my shoulder. "Don't act like Lois. Live as her on stage. I'll do it not just for myself, but for my father." He nodded, trust in his eyes. Then the opening bell rang. I stepped out. The lights hit my face, so bright I had to squint. The entire theater held its breath. For a heartbeat, I heard only the sound of my own pulse, loud and real. As my eyes adjusted, I saw the rows of faces in the audience. And in the very last row, in a dark coat, Ethan sat there. I froze. Every sound vanished. Only his gaze remained, a piercing chill running down my spine. Then I closed my eyes, took one more step forward, and let my heartbeat sync with my first line. The play began. Every word, every movement felt more natural than ever. The woman in Winter's Oath betrayed, broken, but reborn was no longer a role. She was me. I relived every old wound, but without fear this time. The theater fell silent as the final scene began. The lights dimmed, and a beam of white light fell on me. I turned toward the audience, my voice deep and cutting through the air like a blade. A traitor always believes others will stay silent forever. And I knew Ethan understood. His face turned pale in the shadows, his eyes wide with panic. Then everything erupted. Applause thundered like a storm. The whole audience stood, clapping again and again until I couldn't hear anything else. Gavin stood by the stage, nodding slightly. I bowed, trembling, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was because I knew I had finally reclaimed myself. When the curtain fell, I could still hear the applause outside. I was about to step down when noise broke out in the theater. A man's voice shouted, "Police, no one move." I spun around. Gavin came up beside me, placing a steady hand on mine. "Stay calm," he whispered. "Paula already sent the evidence." I looked at him, confused, just as the curtain parted again and light flooded in. Two plainclothes officers moved quickly toward the back row, where Ethan was standing. All eyes turned to him. One officer held up his badge and spoke firmly. "Mr. Ethan Rayburn, you are under arrest for money laundering, embezzlement, and falsifying business records." Ethan stumbled back, his face ashen. "You're insane. I didn't do anything." The room buzzed with noise. One officer took out handcuffs, his tone calm but final. "We have recordings from your assistant confirming you as the ringleader. You have the right to remain silent." From backstage I heard every word clearly. My body went still. I hadn't known the timing was planned this precisely. Paula and Gavin must have kept it secret so I wouldn't lose focus before the show. Ethan struggled, shouting, "She framed me. She set me up." He turned sharply, searching for me. I stepped forward, slowly, as the stage light swept across my face again. "No, Ethan. You trapped yourself long ago." He stared at me wild-eyed, then lowered his head as the cuffs clicked shut. Camera flashes burst, whispers rippled through the crowd. The officers led him down the narrow aisle. When they disappeared behind the door, sound drained from the theater. Gavin stepped closer, whispering, "Your stage has never been more real." The days after the performance passed faster than I expected. The city felt alive again, yet inside me remained a quiet space not yet filled. Each morning, I paused outside the theater not to remember, but to remind myself that everything truly had happened. One early spring afternoon, while I was sorting through old props, the manager handed me an envelope. "Someone sent this for you. From the Maine State Prison." I took it. The handwriting on the front tilted slightly, "Tara Rayburn." I sat down and tore it open. Inside was a folded sheet, the ink still fresh. "Lois, I don't expect forgiveness. I just have one last request. I gave birth to a baby girl. She's healthy and looks so much like him. I know I can't give her a good life. She's innocent. I just want her to be somewhere safe. Give her the chance I never had." I set the letter down. A weight pressed in my chest, a feeling somewhere between pity and confusion. I didn't speak to anyone that evening. When Gavin asked, "Something wrong?" I only said softly, "A message that came too late." 2 days later, I took a car toward the Maine State Prison. The rain was light, droplets stretching like threads across the window. When the car stopped, cold wind struck my face, carrying the scent of rust and damp grass. A guard led me down a long hallway, our footsteps hollow against gray walls. Tara sat at the far end of the visiting room, thinner, paler than I remembered. Her hair was short now, and her eyes no longer carried that proud fire. When I sat down, she spoke, her voice hoarse as if she'd cried all night. "Thank you for coming. I didn't think you would." "I didn't think I would either," I said. "But some things shouldn't be left in silence." Her hands trembled as she unfolded a small blanket. Inside was a tiny baby girl, sleeping peacefully, her little hands curled as if holding the warmth of the world. "This is Mira," Tara said, bending to kiss her daughter's forehead. The nurse chose her name. "It means light." I looked at the child, long lashes, small lips, steady breathing. A new life, untouched by guilt or lies, carrying what both of us had lost a beginning. "I have no one else, Lois," Tara said, her voice breaking. "I know I did terrible things to you, to myself. But she doesn't deserve to pay for my mistakes. Are you sure you want me to do this?" Tara nodded, tears falling onto her hands. "I have no other choice. And you're the only one who saw me before I became that awful person." A guard approached, signaling time was up. Tara lifted Mira and placed her gently in my arms. The baby's skin was soft and warm. As I held her, Mira's tiny breath touched my neck, tightening something deep inside me. Tara's voice trembled. "Take care of her as if she were your own second chance." A state social worker finalized temporary paperwork that day. The long process began, but Mira left the clinic in my arms. The door closed behind me. Outside, the rain had stopped. Pale light filtered through the clouds. I looked down at Mira in my arms, still asleep, peaceful, as if no storm had ever existed. A year later, an early winter morning in New York began with the hum of traffic and neon lights reflecting on rain-soaked streets. I walked into the glass building that housed the Ashmont studio, the place Gavin and I had built from a tiny room in Ashmont, now home to a new generation of passionate performers. On the wall hung a black and white photo of my father. Beneath the inscription, "Light only matters when it's found after darkness." As I walked down the hall, everyone was busy preparing for the premiere of our next play. The hammering, the laughter, the rustle of scripts all blended into a sound I once thought I'd never hear again. Gavin stood on stage, holding Mira in his arms. She could now run, laugh, and call me Mom in her round little voice. He looked at me, smiled softly, no words needed, only the quiet warmth of understanding. That afternoon, I arrived at the studio for a live interview. The host, a middle-aged woman with bright eyes and a calm voice, smiled as I sat down. The studio lights hit my face, reminding me of the stage, bright, intense but no longer frightening. Her first question came, "Miss Lois, audiences know you as a symbol of rebirth for American theater. After everything you've been through, what helped you stand here today?" There were hundreds of reasonable answers, but only one true one. "I was burned," I said, "but that fire forged the light I carry now." The host nodded, and I felt the air around us soften. Not because the audience was moved, but because for the first time, I had spoken the truth. When the program ended, I returned backstage. Mira ran toward me, her small hands open, her curls bouncing in the light. Gavin lifted her up, smiling. "My two strongest girls just conquered New York." I laughed, adjusting his scarf. "You make it sound like we climbed a mountain. Well, this mountain has lights and people brave enough to climb it together." That evening, Winter's Oath was revived in a new production by the Ashmont studio. Standing backstage, I looked out at the packed audience. In my mind, I saw my father sitting in the front row, his kind smile and eyes shining with pride. Mira sat on Gavin's lap, holding a program with the image of a snow-covered tree. The overture began. I stepped out not as the woman who once broke, but as someone who had learned to turn ashes into light. And as the spotlight fell on me, I heard it clearly: this stage, this life, finally belonged to me. The anniversary gala for the Ashmont studio glowed with light. The orchestra played a medley from Winter's Oath while young actors laughed, toasted, and took pictures. Mira, in Gavin's arms, clutched a shiny red balloon. The sight filled me with quiet awe, peace so complete, it was hard to believe where it all began. As I signed programs for guests, a security guard approached, holding a brown envelope. "Miss Lois, this just arrived by courier. The sender requested it be delivered to you personally." I took it. The seal of the federal prison was stamped in the corner. Below it, a name I never thought I'd see again: Ethan Reborn. The sounds of the hall faded. I walked quietly to the back corridor, where warm yellow light fell across the wall, and sat on a wooden bench by the window. I opened the envelope slowly, taking a deep breath as if stepping into an unwritten final scene. Inside was a single folded page, the handwriting neat and rigid, still Ethan's precise, controlled strokes. "Lois, I know you'll never forgive me, But you deserve the truth. The one who called the police wasn't you. It was Tara. She recorded everything to save herself. But without your performance, without that light, I wouldn't have been caught that night. Maybe you won, but remember, I didn't lose because of you. I lost because I forgot I was acting. I read the lines again, feeling something strange and distant. A part of me had once wanted to hear such words, to know he finally understood the cost of what he'd done. But now, reading them, I felt only lightness. No anger, no triumph, just the calm of someone who had truly stepped out of the dark. I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and smiled to myself. So it seems both of us, Ethan, have been living in the same play, just in different roles. I stood and returned to the hall. Music swelled again, the gentle harmony of Silent Night. Mira spotted me and waved. Mom! I bent down, scooping her into my arms. Gavin joined us, grinning. Our famous actress just snuck off backstage to find a new role? I replied, half teasing, half true, this one I'll play for the rest of my life. He touched my shoulder, his eyes filled with a peace I'd never thought I'd know. Outside, snow began to fall. The Christmas lights reflected in Mira's bright eyes, as she laughed softly in my arms. I kissed her forehead and whispered, let's begin again, Mira. A gentle wind brushed the window, carrying the distant sound of church bells through the night. For the first time in years, winter felt truly warm. That night, as Mira slept in my arms, I sat by the window, watching the snow settle quietly on the roof. Maybe every pain in life is only a step toward learning how to love again with a heart once broken, but now grateful for every beat that remains. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you've ever faced your own storm, share it with me. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so we can keep these stories warm together.